Okay, hello and welcome to our third installment of How to Draw a Box. In this installment, we'll be talking about 3-point perspective. So we've seen 1-point perspective, pretty cool. 2-point perspective, maybe a little bit easier to draw and a little bit easier to understand. And now we're on to 3-point perspective. 3-point perspective is a little bit more unusual than 1 or 2-point perspective. So in this case, we actually have 3 different vanishing points. So like the previous 2 examples, we have the round field of view and the horizon line, but now we have 3 vanishing points, and hence the name 3-point perspective. In 3-point perspective, there is only one type of line. So remember that in 1-point perspective, we had 3 types of lines. In 2-point perspective, we had 2 types of lines. And in 3-point perspective, we have only one type of line. And of course, that type of line is the perspective line. So in this box that I've started out drawing here, the first line that I drew was vertical. Now, it wasn't vertical because there are vertical lines in 3-point perspective, or there are always vertical lines in 3-point perspective, but it was vertical because it is positioned directly over the third vanishing point that exists at the bottom of the field of view. Okay? So now as I go to add the edges that would be parallel to that first edge in real life, in this perspective, they're going to converge at the vanishing point that's at the bottom of the field of view. And so one curious thing to note about 3-point perspective is you sort of have the choice of where to place that third vanishing point. It's always going to be either at the bottom or the top, but where you place it is going to determine kind of what your view looks like. So in this case, I have started out by placing the vanishing point, the third vanishing point, at the bottom of my field of view. And so the effect that has on how I'm viewing the object is it looks as though I'm essentially looking down on the object from above. And so, you could imagine flying over a number of buildings and, in a cityscape or something like that. And what you might see is, tops of buildings and then their edges kind of converging at this point. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and keep drawing a few boxes. So I'm going to position this next box kind of behind the first box that I drew. And it's going to be quite a bit larger than the first box that I drew. Okay, so now that I've effectively finished that box, you get kind of a sense of, what the distortion looks like in 3-point perspective. And what we wind up with is this kind of scene that looks a bit like there's one smaller box kind of floating in midair above and in front of a larger box, both of which appear to be taller than they are sort of wide. And again, like usual, I'm finishing up with cutout lines where I trace the lines that form the bounds of the box in the view. And this is just to help the boxes kind of stand out or come forward from the negative space that surrounds them. This is kind of just a common technique to try to highlight something. Okay, so there we have a couple boxes that are drawn in 3-point perspective, but drawn below the horizon line, so they look like we're viewing them from the top. What I'm doing now is adding a vanishing point at the top of our circular point of view, or our circular field of view, so that we can see that now if we draw boxes between the horizon and the vanishing point up top, they're going to look different from the boxes that we drew below the horizon. So with 3-point perspective, you need to keep your boxes between the horizon and the third vanishing point. So you could think about it like this for the first case. If we were flying over a city and we kind of saw the tops of these buildings, the horizon would appear in the distance above those buildings. And similarly, if we're, in this case that I'm drawing now, if we're sort of standing on the ground and looking up at buildings, the horizon is going to kind of appear sort of below the building, or maybe sort of even with the base of the building, but we wouldn't be able to see anything below the horizon in 3-point perspective when the third point is up top. So just something to remember if you happened to draw a box over the horizon, things would get very confusing because the lines below the horizon would converge to a different vanishing point, and it wouldn't make sort of visual sense to you. Okay, so here I'm just going to finish up this one final box, again with a set of cutout lines to make it stand out from the space around it. And with that, I'm finished drawing in 3-point perspective. And the interesting thing to remember about 3-point perspective is just that you can adjust where that third vanishing point goes depending on whether you want to imply that the viewer of the drawing is seeing something from below or from above. It's very useful. So try it for yourself, and happy sketching.